I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Geno TV and Channel 99. Our guest today is a very special one, Peter Boyce. He's been here before, but he's back again. Peter, welcome.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to be here, as usual.
This is a sad occasion because it's probably the last interview we'll do. You and Mary are picking up shortly and moving on to other islands.
We're moving to another island that has the slight advantage of being connected to the mainland by
A
road.
Well, we have the tunnel here.
Yes, but I haven't been here long enough to get the keys to the tunnel.
Peter, you've been involved in a number of things since you've been here. The Maria Mitchell Association, sort of with your true professional background.
Right.
And then the Shellfish Association with your newly acquired, recently acquired skills as a marine biologist, and SHAB, the Shellfish and
Right.
Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. And I'd just like you to reflect a little bit on your Nantucket experience.
Well, Nantucket is a very special community, and when I came here, I decided I really wanted to give to the community in a way that you can't do in a big city. And so there was one time when I was on 4 town boards at once. I mean, boards are work groups, and the fertilizer work group and the Harbor Plan Implementation Committee and SHAB and the fertilizer work group. It's all been aimed at trying to preserve the wonderful harbor that we have.
What got you interested? I mean, it had nothing to do with astronomy. But what was it that got you interested in the harbor?
Well, it was Bob Kennedy at the Maria Mitchell Association got into a project of the scallops. I think maybe the Shellfish Association started him on that project. And
he wasn't a marine scientist either.
No, but he was
an ornithologist.
And being so, he was viewed, I think, by everybody as being neutral in the nub question way back when. And he asked me if I'd like to, because we had become fishing buddies, and so it was. He asked me if I wanted to come and help analyze the data, and we were doing some water quality measurements, and I'm pretty good at instrumentation, and so I joined back in 2003, and then it just kept going more and more interesting. And I like to say that if you have a choice between spending a cold winter's night, a long winter's night at the telescope in the dome, and versus going out and spending a nice long summer day on the harbor doing your work, it suddenly becomes very simple.
Go ahead. Did you have something more?
No, that's.
What are the accomplishments that you've contributed to Nantucket that you're most proud of?
I think it's the recognition by the community at large, selectmen and so forth, that the eelgrass, loss of eelgrass, is a problem, and that everybody paid lip service to it. But when you do it for 10 years and in a scientific way and do it the same time every year with the same diver, your assessments are pretty accurate, and you could just show 5% per year loss, and that's not sustainable.
Eventually it's all gone.
It's
right?
all gone.
Almost, except for the last.
And so it has almost pretty much disappeared now on Hussey Shoal, which was such a wonderful scalloping ground. Of course, it's still good in the horse shed across from Brant Point, and but anyway, I'm just proud that the community is now rallied behind it, accepted.
Are you optimistic about the future? Maybe not tomorrow, but in a couple of years?
I am optimistic, and I just see the town working on things, on the septic systems and tight tanks along the very border of the harbor watershed, and so forth, and then the fertilizer regulations, but it's really an education thing.
What about one of the things that's out there as another sort of elephant in the room, but really isn't talked about very much, is the whole issue of runoff and its impact on water quality, because runoff from rainstorms and so forth, to the extent it goes into the harbor, which much of it does, at least from the town, carries with it all kinds of things, from oil that's dripped from cars to again, fertilizer and pesticides and so forth from people's lawns, and I don't know what else. Ice cream.
It's one of the three things that we can control: the runoff from hard surfaces, the fertilizer that doesn't get used by the lawn, and leaches into the groundwater and then into the harbor almost immediately because of our sandy soils, and then the use of the septic tanks, and which do not take a lot of nitrogen out of the water. And so those are the three things that we can control.
Right, but in terms of, again, the runoff, I know the town has installed some filters, I guess is the best description for them, at points where the storm sewers go into the harbor, but not all of them have been retrofitted that way, as far as I know.
No, that's right. And every little dust particle that goes in carries with it a lot of nitrogen, and so that is a problem. And that's the one problem that hasn't been effectively attacked, I think, by the town yet.
So pressure needs to stay on.
Oh yes,
yeah.
well definitely the pressure needs to stay on, and it's as I say, it's a problem of educating the public and having them sign on to not coming to Nantucket and wanting their lawns to look like where they came from. I mean, why are you coming to Nantucket if you want to make it look like just where you came from?
We'll leave that question.
That's my
We'll
thought.
leave that question out there. Let people answer it from themselves. The question of again, I want to get back to the runoff for just a minute. The town has recently installed little placards on some of the storm sewers in town to suggest that pouring things down the storm sewers is not necessarily a good idea for the health of the harbor.
Yeah.
That again is an effort, but it by itself it's probably not enough. Do you think?
No, but I think it helps a lot. Just realize that every time you pour something down that grate, it's going into the harbor. This was something that was suggested in the harbor plan and has been carried out a lot. And I think one of the hopeful things is that a lot of the school classes have taken that on as a project. And I think to restore that and get the second go-round of school classes thinking about it would be a good thing to push for. Because as you say, they're not all marked, and just to get the classes involved in going out and marking, you know, a certain set of the grates or the drains would be a very good thing. And it makes the kids think about it. And when the kids think about it, hopefully it gets their parents to think about it, and so on.
Back to astronomy for a minute.
Yes.
What was it that attracted you originally to your career in astronomy?
Oh, it was just, I grew up in the country, and my father was very interested in the seasons. It was during the Second World War. We had a victory garden, and when to plant and when the last frost is, and the sun getting higher and higher in the sky during the spring, and you know, peaking in the summer and then going back down in the winter. It makes such a difference when you're raised close to nature like that, and you're depending upon your vegetable garden. And I just then began to think more about it. I read a lot and actually built a little telescope when I was in high school. But I was going to be a doctor when I went to college, and it was an outstanding professor.
Who dissuaded you from medicine?
I had to take a science, and I thought, well, I'll take astronomy. And suddenly it became interesting. And it was a welcoming science. Graduate students were very welcoming to the undergraduates. And it was a wonderful time to get involved in that. So then on to grad school and work in Arizona at Lowell Observatory, and wound up in Washington, D.C. as an administrator, which got me so far from the sky that it was pitiful.
You ended up in the water instead.
But then, you know, when I came here, I was on the board of Mariah Mitchell, and I helped to hire one of the, Vladimir, the astronomer previous to Regina, and and I actually wrote I drafted the proposal that Vladimir sent in to National Science Foundation, which got us the money for the new telescopes.
As you reflect on your, 15, 16, 17 years here?
Well, more like almost 25 now.
Full-time?
Not full-time.
No, but full-time.
But full-time, it's 16 years.
16 years, yeah. Just give us a couple of the great joys of Nantucket for you, and then some of the maybe a couple of disappointments.
Well, one of the great joys is you can do things that make a difference in a small town. One person can actually have an effect. And personally, one of the things I enjoyed the most was working with the kids as assistants on my research. And then the program I had at the end for the last 2 years of teaching high school kids about science by having them do a research project that actually produced knowledge that we did not know before.
I believe you mentioned that one of your two T's, if that's the right word, one of the people you sort of brought along is now finished.
Well, Oliver Bender, yes, graduated in marine science from the University of Rhode Island and has just been accepted into the University of New Hampshire in their marine science program.
For a PhD or for master's?
Well, he's going for a master's first, but
yeah.
His goal is to really go on for a PhD. And my other student that I got acquainted with because she worked at the Mariah Mitchell Aquarium was Helen Cheng, and then became my assistant for a year, a summer. And she went on to the UNH, got her master's degree, and won a very prestigious fellowship, NOAA fellowship.
Good.
So it's been
that is rewarding.
It's really rewarding to see that happen. But in terms of Nantucket, I guess one of my biggest disappointments is people don't treasure it more. I mean, in such a beautiful place, who is it that can throw trash out of the car and into the bushes? I worked on the green team for a while, and then my wife and I became so-called adjunctsters, and we've been keeping our neighborhood clean. In fact, Eric Goddard says he's really sad to see us go because somebody else will have to pick up the trash.
Do you foresee opportunities for yourself in similar sorts in Florida? Which key are you going to?
We're going to Isla Morada, Upper Matacumbe Key, and it's just below Key Largo. But certainly it's beautiful water, and certainly it's under real stress. They're losing their equivalent of eelgrass.
Which is coral?
Turtle grass.
Turtle grass, okay. Coral too.
But they're losing coral too.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, the variation in the amount of fresh water that used to flow into the Florida Bay through the Everglades it's been way down in the last few years.
Is that from lack of rain, lack of more development, less catchment area?
All the above.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do something about it, but it's not being received very well at the state level. I mean, the people have voted quite a bit of money to buy back sugar cane lands, and the governor has not spent it for that. And so that's... Anyway, I don't know, maybe I will get into it. Maybe it's such a bigger scale that it's hard to see my role. But I'm sure that there will be opportunities working with Audubon Society and so forth that are doing actually a lot of water quality measurements to occasionally get out and get into a program like that, so which I look forward to.
Is there one final message you'd like to leave the people of Nantucket?
You have a great place here, and take care of it. That's what I'd say.
Peter, thank you so much for all you've done.
Oh, thank you, Dan. I appreciate everybody's good wishes.